I yearn for him, and if he appears, I bow my head in humbleness to his majesty, not from fear, but from reverence of his beauty. Seedy, from the path of yearning to taste the love.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome, greetings everyone. My name is Saqib, your host on the Hikmah Project podcast, and today we'll be speaking to Jamila Davies. Jamila has been embarking on the Shadli Sufi school and has been practicing the art of healing in that school, in which she's been developing writing as a spiritual discipline as part of a spiritual ministry project. I had a taste of the work she does and I found it to be quite profound. It was more than just simply self-reflection and sharing. There was something quite deep going on, and she tells us more about that in the podcast. Prior to that, she was a teacher in the Vedic tradition and practiced deep inner silence and was a teacher in that tradition as well. So she helped lots of people journey to that deep place of inner silence, and then at some point she found the Chandelier Sufi Path taught by Sidi Muhammad Jama. So she'll be running a Writing from the Heart course, which begins on the 14th of November over 6 sessions every week till the 19th of December at 5:30 p.m. UK time, and 2 hours each session, and the places are limited to 10 participants. So there's more details on that on the website, so if you're interested, do get in touch and do sign up ASAP. So before I play the interview with her, just a few updates. There are also 2 new courses starting in November. One on Quranic Arabic, a beginner's course on Quranic Arabic with application to mystical texts, and that's with Dr. Hani Ibrahim. And the other course, also on the same day, is on the Fusus al-Hikam with Dr. Hani Ibrahim, in which we have a line-by-line reading of Ibn Arabi's Fusus with some classical commentaries with Dr. Hani Ibrahim, and we take a discussion-based pedagogy or approach to working through and reading the Fusus. So do support the Hikmah project, it's much appreciated. Thank you for all the new subscribers, or even if you just want to join as a free member to get updates. Do so follow us on social media as well. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, as well as all the major podcasting platforms. So without further ado, here's a podcast. Welcome to the Hikmah Project podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So if we can just begin by getting to know a bit more about yourself, could you tell our listeners more about, well, firstly, you being a teacher in the Vedic tradition and entering this deep silence and teaching people how to access that silence. How did you come about? How did you enter that tradition, and what was all that about?
I think it was dumb luck how I entered it. That was the 1960s, and there was all kinds of heyday stuff going on. And the Beatles took hand with Maharishi, and so of course that was like the big denouement. Everyone, oh well, let's all go do that then. That wasn't the entire reason for stepping in. It had more to do with what was going on in my life at the time, which was I was divorced with 2 young children, and one of my little kids was very, very sick. And so I was going to school and trying to work and raise 2 kids. And the stress of that, when I heard about TM and dropping into the silence and letting go of stress, I thought, okay, that's for me. So I I took a course. I lived in Sacramento at the time, and I took a course there and learned the technique and was surprised with the very first experience of how deep I went. Just from 0 to 60, boom, I was in the silence. So I went, okay, that's good. And so I continued to practice the technique for a number of years. And then Maharishi started offering courses, advanced trainings and teacher training. And so I went to an introductory teacher training session in California, and began to learn the technique as a teacher. And then after that 1 month course, my girlfriend said she would stay home and watch my kids while I went to Spain for 3 months. And I was floored that anyone would take care of my kids for 3 months. But I said, why don't we all go to Spain? And that's what we did. So we all went to Spain together, and I studied to become a teacher at TM. And then from that course, I went to Anchorage, Alaska, which is where we had job offers. And I started teaching. And that was like the beginning of the process. And as I taught people to experience the transcendent, my experience of it became deeper and deeper. And I continued to go to advanced courses, etc. And then there was something, I don't remember the change, but there was a shift at one point when I realized that I had been doing this for quite some time. And I felt like I had come to, like, this is it. This is as far as I'm going. And what I was experiencing was deep and inner quiet, but I just didn't, and it was affecting my day to day. So I was grateful for that. But I just felt like there needs to be more. And I didn't know what the more was. And I didn't know why I felt there needed to be more. So often when people ask me about my life and how I got where I am, or what brought me to this point, I often answer that it's God's tractor beam. It's like God is reeling me in piece by piece, piece by piece. And that I had reached a point in my growth that it was time for the next step. So that's how it feels to me, is that he wants us for himself. That's the reason we're here. And so when it got to a point that the TM wasn't giving me that deeper, intimate connection with God that I find in Sufism, I thought, okay. I mean, it's not even so much that I thought. I just met somebody who said, oh, there's this Sufi Sheikh teaching about Sufism. You should come and hear him. And so I tried several times, and things didn't line up. But then finally I met Salima Edelstein, who is here at the Farm of Peace. And my husband and I attended a course that was being offered in Frederick. And the teacher was really great. His name is Jeff Bronner. And he came across with so much love and openness that I just went, okay, well, this is it. This is the next step. So we took hand at that point. And then, as fate would have it, there were opportunities to take teacher training courses as a Sufi, to learn more about the technique and to become a teacher. And it was in that process. I was studying at the Sufi University, and I had completed 3 years, which at that time was how much was offered, 3-year program. And then Salima offered a ministry master's in a spiritual ministry. And I went, okay, I think I need to do that. And it was in the context of the spiritual ministry program, when I was trying to come up with a practicum for my graduation, that I received a tremendous download direct from the source. That this is it. And at the time, I mean, it just was thrilling, because finally I knew what I was going to do for my practicum. But I didn't realize, I mean, I realize now, but at the time, it was so profound and so intense. I should have known that there was much more to it than just completing my practicum. But as it has turned out, it has become a practice of giving love and sharing love and helping people open to their own deep inner wisdom and the love they carry inside. It's just been a tremendous gift.
Amazing. So before we go into the program and the practicum, could you maybe just say a bit more about what the or how the Sufi path addressed your inner sort of yearning of that deeper connection, and how was it when you met Sidi, and how
Yeah.
was it to be in that
And
relationship with him?
okay. Um, Interesting. There's several things there that, first of all, how this practice has deepened my walking or deepened my connection or my awareness of God is night and day. It's like before I knew about God and I prayed to Him and I was aware in the silence of the potential of His nearness, but I hadn't come face to face. And what the Sufi path has made possible is that experience of the divine within with such intimacy and nearness that you no longer exist and only He is. And that's the gift of the Sufism. That's the gift of this walking. And it has amazing practical applications, I must say. You can get yourself out of your naps faster than a speeding bullet. When you know where to go with it, it's like, here's the program. Start here and go here and go here and go here and done. And it's like once you learn how immediately accessible the divine is in your life, you don't waste any time arguing on the surface and, fussing with, oh, he said, and then she said, and oh, did you see what she did? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of that stuff is still there. It's still a very interesting, intimate part of our experience. And yet we now know how not to stay in it.
So, in terms of the practicum, the writing from the heart, could you tell us more about what that involves, and is it more than just simply self-reflection? Is it, you mentioned
Oh, yeah.
self-discovery and healing? What was this download, and how did it manifest?
Well, you have to realize I've been doing this practice of writing from the heart since 2007, since I graduated from the university. And as I've continued to do it, of course, the changes continue. It's like when I first started, it was sort of like a way to get people together and we would all sit together. And it was sort of like a nervous activity. But it came from, I have to say, it came from years of writing. I had started journaling in my 20s or early 30s. And the reason I started writing is that I couldn't make sense of what was going on in my mind. There was so much mental activity that I couldn't get to what it was. Why was I upset? What was going on? And so I started writing in my journal. And for years, I've been writing in journals. And I've studied writing. I've taken courses. I've read every journal writing book I could get my hands on. So I really had a sense of what writing could do. And then this episode of download, I had been working on my practicum, working with a woman in Artorica, and we were having trouble getting. It was like the wheels kept spinning, but we didn't get any traction, and I couldn't figure out why. And there were several steps that I had taken up to that point, and one of them was to buy her a journal and say, write down what we've talked about after of the fact. After we meet, write down your thoughts and then we can discuss them. And she just was so busy with a young child and a husband in her own life that didn't ever happen. And so finally, in one check-in with my mentor, who was Selima Edelstein, I said, I don't know what to do. And she says, well, why don't you write while you're together? And I'm telling you, Zakib, it was as if the heavens opened. It was just like this huge sense of joy and elation that I still, to this day, when I think of it, I can feel it was like I was lifted up out of my being into a higher realm. And I was told, this is what you need to do, write with them. And so it was just like, wow, what a difference. I can still see the light that it was like a flood of light that came down. So, like I said, at the time, it was just, oh, goody, I finally have a practicum I can do. But it's in the time since, I see that it is a much deeper transmission that came through. And as I continue to work with people and open the practice, I see there's just an unfolding that continues and continues. And the heart continues to open and the soul continues to open. And the connection with the other being is always just so much richer. We experienced that when you and I wrote together. When you read to me what you wrote, my heart just surrendered to what you were saying. And then when I read to you what I wrote, your heart drank so deeply from that. And that's what happens when we sit together and write together, is we open doors for each other. We allow each other to really experience that deep transcendent beauty that's always there, just on the other side.
I was going to ask you about that because when we had a session together, my initial, shall we say, expectation was it would be a self-reflection sort of thing in terms of reflective writing. But I felt that it was much, much deeper. And just as you have waves on the surface of a sea, and then you've got these undercurrents.
Yeah.
These undercurrents came through later that night and in the morning, and probably for the next couple of days. There was a deep level of transmission. Also, I felt there was something around consciousness, the collective consciousness, which you were tapping into, and how when somebody shares what they need to say, sometimes it's exactly what the other person has to listen to. And somehow you held that space, that line. Something happened. I don't know how to put it into words, but there was some element of synchronicity. And in the way I felt you held our session, there was almost a precision of when to start and stop. And it was just beautiful. It was a deep level of synchronicity and harmony. That's what I picked up. God knows best, but I was quite moved by it, So what was going on?
I think you just described what was going on. Is that I open my heart and my soul and I speak from that. That's all I do. So whatever Allah does with that, that's Allah. And I feel like the sense of synchronicity and connection, when you go to that deepest level within yourself, you are connected with everything and everyone. There is no other. We always see it as someone else, but there's just this one exquisite being, and we get to connect through our deep inner practice with that. And that's what the discovery of the writing has been for me, is that At first, it was about just getting people to write and talk to each other and hear each
Mm.
other. And at first, it really was more or less superficial. But as the practice developed and the opening continued, and particularly because it's a group practice, I began to see the phenomenal exchanges that were happening with people. I had a class where I just had two students, and they were here for a 3 day weekend, and I taught them all 3 days. And I'm riding along doing what I do, but they were in sync in a way that I hadn't seen before. And it was like Allah put them here together, and put them in this class in order for them to do this amazing interaction. It was like I was just there as what do you call it, fodder. They were doing but I do believe that the fact that I was there and set up the circumstance with which they were able to then really deeply connect with each other, that was how that came about. So I'm not, I'm grateful that Allah has given me this opportunity to do this. And yet I'm quite sure it's God doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm aware that Sidi would ask his student to copy out chapters from his book, something like the
Yeah. Yeah.
Stations of the Nafs and Heart, and it's a practice that still continued.
Yeah.
Could you say something about that?
Yeah.
Was it on a conceptual level? Was it something deeper? Is there a transmission?
It's
What's
all of
that?
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all of that. I mean, I'm reading, I'm going to read you something that I have in my notes from earlier. This is from Maktub by Paulo Coelho. The master says, write, whether it's a letter, a diary, or just some notes as you speak on the telephone, but write. In writing, we come closer to God and to others. If you want to understand your role in the world better, write. Try to put your soul in writing, even if no one reads your words, or worse, even if someone winds up reading what you did not want to be read. The simple fact of writing helps us to organize our thoughts and see more clearly what is in our surroundings. A paper and pen perform miracles. They alleviate pain, make dreams come true, and summon lost hope. The word has power. Um, and that's just one example of the ways in which writing has such a spiritual impact. And CD knew that. And when he had us write his books, it wasn't just an exercise in writing. When I write CD's books, before I know it, it's CD writing. That's what's happening. I'm tuned into his spirit. I'm tuned into his heart, his soul, you know? And so then the words, instead of just being the sentences in the book, I don't like reading. I've never liked reading. I'm dyslexic. And so reading to me has always been a torture. But when CD said, write my books, I thought, okay, that's something I can do. And in the writing, I discovered that when I write CD's book, I'm in his stream. And being in his stream brings me the awareness, the liveliness of what it is he's bringing to the world, what he is bringing to me in my consciousness. I actually am right there in that stream with him. I'm not making it up. It's not coming from me, mind you. I have the gift of being able to be in it with him. So that to me has been, for years, I would write these books and I would be chomping at the bit, like, why do I have to do this? But gradually, it became clear. It's just so I can be with that spirit, that wisdom.
Beautiful. And
something of the same happens when we write together. We share in that fundamental oneness.
And could you say something more about the healing it's a there's always self-discovery and witnessing the beloved in the manifestations of immanence and
Well,
transcendence.
go ahead.
And
Sorry.
yeah, and are there maybe examples of um, students who've come and joined your class where they've experienced deep levels of healing as well?
I think, Lala. So you started out by saying, where does how does the healing work? And it's on the levels, a level of the nafs to begin with. Because when we write together, we read together. So, like the other day, you and I did some writing, and then we shared with each other what we wrote. And it's in the reading, first of all, that you might actually, for the first time, hear what it is that's been in your mind and in your heart. And often, when people read aloud, the emotion associated with what they've written shows up. I mean, they can write it on the page, no big deal. Then they read it, and all of a sudden they're choking up and they can't get the words out because they didn't know that what they were writing was a deep, intimate knowing. And so it just like brings it up for them. So that's the reading part. That's part of the healing. But the other part is um, he was a hidden treasure that longed to be known. Each of us is. We each are a hidden treasure and we long to be known. And so when you find yourself writing with people and speaking out your truth from what you've written and finding people responding to that in ways that you are unexpected, it's the most healing because you long to be known. You want to be heard. Every little kid, mommy, 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 you want to be heard. You want to be paid attention to. You want to be known. Why would that be any different? That's what Allah is asking. And so to have your words spoken aloud and to be heard by others is very deeply healing. And actually being able to access those deeper levels, very intimately, deeply healing. So I think it's a matter of it's a part of the program. It's part of the package. As you open your heart and you open your mind and you open your soul and you share with others, they open theirs. And then there's that wonderful experience of the oneness, the unity that comes just by that sharing, just by sitting in that circle, witnessing the beauty and the light and the love of all the others, as well as yourself being witnessed. So, there's levels of that. I mean, our writing circles don't necessarily bring us to Baka, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a practice.
Mm.
It's a practice for opening.
And Jamila, could you say, or would you like to say something about what the circles might look like for those who are interested in joining, or is that a surprise for whatever unfolds in the moment?
The circles would be, we would do it on Zoom like this, I'm assuming, and we can't have a large group. So it's not, on Zoom, it's hard to do more than, I think 10, I have set a limit at 10.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be time to share. And so that's the other thing, the length of the class. If it's an hour and a half, 10 is max. If it's an all-day session, we can have more.
Mm.
I'm not actually signing on for that. But so if it's an hour and a half, if it's an hour, then we probably need to keep it to a little less because there needs to be time for each person to have the experience of writing and then reading and feel the connection with others as they write and read. It takes a village. You'd have to all be a part of it. It doesn't just happen magically because one person does it. And And I've had people come to me and just in their various ways say, I would never have known that about myself. I'm so grateful. Thank you for helping me see the way in which I X, 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 or what it is I needed to open in order to forgive this person. Or, it's like I didn't know that it was because of this that I was mad at that,
Mm.
So people need time to discover those things in a session. So we would probably, if there would only be 8 people in the class, we'd do a couple sessions of writing, and in between we'd do the reading, and we would see how that goes. There may be some feedback somebody needs but then we'll just stay with that flow. We'll write together, we'll read together. We always begin with the Fatiha. And if somebody is not a Muslim or not a Sufi and they want to know, I can read this Fatiha in English so they understand the beauty of the prayer as we pray it. And then we do the remembrance. We drop inside saying the name of God to ourselves. And I always ask people to bring in the name that brings them that deepest sense of connection with God. Because I'm not going to tell some Christian they can't say Jesus, because to them, that's the name. So say the name. I might suggest they say it in Arabic because it has a ring to it. But we just use the name that brings us to that most intimate experience of God within. And then we write, and then we read, and then we do it again.
Mm-hmm. Jamila, can I ask, who is your favorite author, your writer, who stirs your soul?
Well, the woman that started me on this trick was Anais Nin. That was way back. And I've had Stephen King is on my list. I've done some really deep work with, now I can show you my age. I can't remember her name. It's called The Art and Practice of Spiritual Memoir. And I can't tell you her name. I have to get the book. Elizabeth Jarrett Andrew. Her book is about writing, how to write a memoir, and she's been my mentor for that for a number of years. But I don't really have. I have a lot of people I've read that have to do with writing and writing practice. But Anais Nin, I think she was the beginning. And there's a Journal of a Solitude by Sarton. Oh gosh, there's so many. Flat Rock Journal is another one, and I can't tell the authors because I can't see them. Circle of Stones is another. I mean, there's just these wonderful books that give you that taste of what it's a form of art. Writing is an art form, and of course we lose sight of that because we have to write for our work and we have to type on computers, and oh my god, and you lose sight that but what's behind it is this rich, deep, delicious quality that brings life to the soul, life to the heart, and enlivens your awareness of what is really beautiful.
What about spiritual poetry, Sufi poetry? There's a long tradition.
Yeah.
The Persians are brilliant at it. Rumi, Hafiz, Sadi, and Sidi himself wrote poetry. So do you have poets sometimes coming in and
Well, did you meet you met Hawa
yes,
Arzu?
yes.
Oh, yeah. I've had poets come in, and she is among them. And I do read. I have read poets, and I mean, I've read Hafez, and I read Rumi, and every time I turn around, I find another expression of it. There's some poems that just came across my desk the other day, Sufi poems, Sufi, and I can't bring it up right now, but yes, the thing that I notice in writing a lot of times some people have a technique, have a gift that when they write, it comes out in poetry. It's just the way they write. Our Imam, Abdul Karim, when he would write with me, it always was poetry. It's just gorgeous. And other people just, like when Helwa writes, her writing is so expressive, so deeply rich and delicious. It's almost like poetry. And then she does write it. So,
Mm,
you know,
beautiful.
yeah,
I want to read you a quote by Mary Oliver, one of my
yeah.
favorite poets and writers. It's just a brief quote. I read the way a person might swim to save his or her life. I wrote that way too.
Exactly. I read the way a person might swim to save his life, and I write that way.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the writing for me in the very beginning was a lifesaver. I mean, it gave me a place to put on paper all the anxiety and angst and, in my early journals. It was just a lifesaver. And then gradually it became a tool for self knowledge and then self expression and self knowing, self transcendent.
Jamila, just on that note, um, we often hear people, the great sages of the Islamic tradition, like Ibn al-Arabi, who
Mm,
says he never wrote anything from himself. I think his level of inspiration was so deep that everything he says was given to him. He's
yeah,
simply transcribing. And Rumi, before meeting Shams, was a Gnostic scholar, and it's suddenly something opened, and these
yeah.
verses just poured out. So how do you understand somebody like Ibn Arabi who says he met this mute youth at the Kaaba and the whole Futuhat was given to him, and the Fusus was given, all he's doing is just he's the middleman. He's just transcribing
Right.
what has come through. That do you have like is that an experience you can relate to? Does that
Yeah,
ever happen?
it is. But more than that, I think of what Sidi has been teaching us from the beginning, which is we're meant to become the hands and the eyes and the feet and the tongue of God. We are meant to become that expression. And to the extent that we can. So what happens as you clear away the detritus of self, there's more and more room for that pure, beautiful expression to come through. And I get it now and then. You heard it the other day. There it was, bam. But like you said, do you always write like that? No. I mean, sometimes I'm going, why did she say that to me? I get
Hmm.
caught in the outer conflicts or the outer beliefs or the outer nonsense. But if I start writing from there and I'm using this technique, I go past it really fast. And sometimes I'm simply speaking what I'm told. And that's it. It's coming through me, and I know that I'm the transcriber.
Hmm. On that note, Jamila, I think I just feel like falling silent. As Rumi says, my pen has stopped writing and I'm going to become silent now. So, alhamdulillah, I don't have anything else to ask other than to sit in your presence in silence. So, I'd just like to thank you and inshallah, really look forward to this course and this experience of writing with you.
Alhamdulillah. I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you, beloved. This
Thank
has been a pleasure. I was so nervous and it wasn't hard at all.
you. Alhamdulillah. Any last words to anyone who's listening and is interested in joining?
Yes, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to try it. It's as simple as sitting down with an empty piece of paper and writing a grocery list. I mean, it's that simple. It doesn't require any major skill or any history of writing. All it requires is a pen and a paper and a willingness to say a prayer of opening, a willingness to open to the inspiration that's there. And you don't have to read out if you don't want to. I always give people that option because some people are really shy. But let me tell you, reading aloud is where I'd say at least 50 to 60% of the impact of the writing comes through. Because not only do you discover your own connection to the words, you discover other people's connection to your words. Like something I write might be the very thing that Saqib needs to hear. And the same thing, what you write is exactly what my heart's needing to hear. And so we give each other, in that process of sharing, healing.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.